Our freedoms are under attack, and the Saving America Conference couldn't have come at a better time. This is the Rucker Report on the GK Podcast Network, and I'm your humble host, JD Rucker, talking today about the Saving America Conference, which is the launching point for the American conservative movement. I wanted to give a little background before the conference, which is April 18th. That's this Saturday on Facebook Live. You can go to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/American Conservatism. You can go to AmericanConservativeMovement.com and get more details. You can always look through my tweets. I have plenty of tweets about it. Twitter @JDRucker, or one of the co-founders of the American Conservative Movement and the driving force behind this conference, Mr. Jeff Dornick, who's also obviously behind the Gatekeepers Online, the GK Podcast Network. So that's where you're watching this, so you're probably very well familiar with him. You might not be as familiar with me, and more importantly, you might not know a whole lot about this conference or the movement behind it. Let's start with the movement first. Back in 2009, I wouldn't say I was apolitical, but I wasn't very concerned about it. I just moved out to California a couple of years before, took on a nice corporate job, had the good life, so to speak, in Southern California. I was in a nice conservative area. Things were great, nothing to worry about, nothing to see here, except things were getting bad on the political front. We had the most radical president of our time, of any time. President Barack Obama was in the White House, and he had bolstering him on Capitol Hill the most radical congressmen and senators in our history. This batch that was going to eventually put out Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, as well as attempt to put out some other very radical, very aggressive leftist policies. They were on the move. 2009, they had control. And so the need to fight back was there and very apparent. I had several meetings with some prominent conservatives who I believed would be able to help to build the American conservative movement. But something happened. And it's ironic that one of the guests at the Saving America Conference will be Michael Johns, because he represents what happened back in 2009. He was one of the co-founders of the Tea Party. And as we were meeting, we started seeing this Tea Party thing popping up and realized, wow, okay, that's it. They're basically doing what we wanted to do. So there's no need. Let's put the American conservative movement on a shelf for now. Fast forward to 2018 and the midterm elections, and things were different. Nothing against the Tea Party. I know there are challenges there from an organizational perspective. I know that the foundation and the heart of the movement is still there. It's just not organized at this stage. And so that brings us to the need to revisit these old ideas, these old concepts of promoting conservatism across America, which is why I started looking into forming the American conservative movement. But the people weren't there. And I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about patriots who are watching this or patriots across the country. There were plenty of conservatives there, but this isn't the type of thing that you do alone. And so I went out and sought people to assist, and that search lasted until about 3 or 4 weeks ago, when the people popped into the right place. But I'm getting ahead of myself. One of the things that I did during this I guess planning stage from mid-2018 until just a few weeks ago was explore and learn as much as I could, research what was happening out there, not just in politics. I think we all, those of us who are conservatives, who are very politically minded, who keep an eye on what's happening in D.C., at our local city halls, the people who probably can name their congressmen and their state representatives, and hopefully their mayor at the very least. These are the people that are out there, but the organization to drive them was not. We've seen some good ones. I mean, you look at Project Veritas and the amazing work that they're doing, going undercover and exposing progressivism for what it is. You see Judicial Watch, what Tom Fitton and his outfit have done is nothing short of outstanding. I mean, they've gone through using the Freedom of Information Act and lawsuits and all of the legal means possible to, again, expose leftism for what it is and uncover the corruption that is rampant, not just in D.C., but across the country. In politics, at almost every level, there is corruption, and it needs to be exposed. But then there are other groups. And I would say, this may sound harsh, but I would say the majority of conservative groups out there today are not effective. They may mean well. Don't get me wrong. I don't think that their ideology is necessarily off. But there seems to be a focus on growth. And I'm not talking about growth of conservatism across America. I'm talking about growth of these various groups and organizations. There's a huge focus on fundraising. But there's not necessarily a huge focus on taking those funds and making major changes in America. I'm not going to sit here and rip on other conservative organizations, okay? I just want it understood that my first instinct is and always will be to help what's already built. Part of the very premise of conservatism is to take what works and roll with it. The problem is, over 2 years of researching this, I didn't find anything that was really truly working. Again, there are those organizations that are very effective, but they have a niche. Project Veritas, wonderful at undercover videos. Nobody can do it better. Okay, nobody can do it better than what they have been able to accomplish in their years of service to the American people. And again, Judicial Watch, they do great. There's plenty of good and bad pro-life groups. There's plenty of good and bad pro-Second Amendment groups. And again, I don't want to say that there's groups out there that are bad as in their motives are bad. It's just they're not effective. They're not promoting conservatism in a manner that is making an impact. They're good at putting out messages. Perhaps they're good at putting out memes or getting people riled up on Twitter. That's great. That's necessary. There needs to be some component of that involved in any proper movement, because in this day and age in 2020, technology is where it's at. And as a lot of us are learning, thanks to the coronavirus, technology is pretty much all we've got as far as communicating with the outside world. I'm not going to get into a story about my grocery store run today. We'll save that for when we have more time. The need for a movement, a conservative movement, has always been there and will always be there, even when we're up and running and big and everything is hunky-dory and we're hitting the streets, taking action. There's still going to be a need for localized movements. There's going to be a need for even worldwide movements. And I'm not talking about globalist conservatism. I'm talking about the type of international conservatism that will fight against globalism. It's not a fight that we can win just here in the United States. We need to make sure that other countries are also becoming as self-reliant as possible, not looking to the United States for all of their needs, not turning to the United Nations to rule over them. We need globalism to be eradicated and across the board. So there will be that need as well. But our focus is one that is going to be much more, what's the word for it, action-driven here in the United States. We want to be able to find authoritarianism as it's rising and quash it. And we want to be able to find authoritarianism when it's already in place. This is an easy video to make because right now we are seeing it. There was never a time in recent American history when such blatant attacks on our freedoms were happening widespread in many cities and states across this wonderful nation. What's happened? Well, the coronavirus happened, and it has become a smokescreen. And in many ways, it has become a test of Americans, a test of these policies, these radical progressive policies, this hyper-leftist bent towards making sure that they are setting policies that put us to the test. Are we willing to accept them? That's the question. And in many cases, we're failing. I'm not going to debate the efficacy of social distancing. I believe in social distancing. And I'm not even going to debate whether or not it should be a recommendation or a mandate, because I know that there are, tried and true conservatives out there who still believe, yeah, I know that this whole big government mandate thing is bad and what they're doing is bad, but I'm kind of scared of the coronavirus. I'm not going to blame people for that. Okay, I'm not going to hold that over you. These are extreme circumstances, and there's no need for us to make enemies within the conservative movement based on nuances of a perspective pertaining to a virus that most people know very little about. We do know that it spreads quickly. We do know that it can kill people. We do know that it affects mostly those with pre-existing conditions, with what is it, premorbidities, or whatever the technical phrase is. And we know that it mostly affects older people. But we also know that spreading it at any means, people will go out there and say, hey, I don't have any contact with old people. Okay, but do you have contact with young people who might have contact with older people? Those arguments, I'm not buying it. So I am a big fan of social distancing. I'm personally not a fan at all of mandated social distancing. I think that it's something that we as Americans, we must be self-reliant in this regard, and we must take responsibility for our own actions. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. Whose responsibility is it? Is it the government's? No, they have certain responsibilities. They do need to make sure that the right infrastructure is there, and that private industry working with government can help to get more masks, to get ventilators, to get tests, to get all these things out there. That's fine. That's a role the government must play. But as far as telling us that we can't play t-ball with our kids in the park, and that we're going to get arrested if we're not wearing masks before we get on the subway. Look, the coronavirus is scary because, as the president always says, it is an invisible enemy, and nobody likes invisible enemies. I am still scarred, maybe not for life, but scarred for now, from an incident that happened a couple of years ago where I put my shoes on and was bitten by a brown recluse spider. My foot swelled up. It was not fun. Since then, I have always checked my shoes before putting them on. So, yeah, invisible enemies can be terrifying, but they should not be debilitating. And most importantly, the presence of an enemy like the coronavirus is not grounds for the suspension of the Constitution. We still have rights. We do have rights of assembly, rights of religion. We need to be able to worship religion any way we please, and as long as it doesn't break other laws. I'm not a big fan of saying, you have to honor religious rights no matter what, because there's certain religions that demand human sacrifices. There's certain religions that demand dog sacrifices, whatever, goat sacrifices. I don't know. There are limits to freedom of religion, but it should not be so limited that people are not allowed to drive to their church and listen to an Easter sermon from the safety of their car. The coronavirus does not, as far as we know, travel through glass or metal. Maybe they know something we don't. Maybe these very progressive hyper-leftists are just better informed than we are. I don't think so. I think that this is, as I said earlier, a test. It's a test of our resolve. It's a test of our determination to fight for our rights. It's across the board. So many Americans are failing. We are complying. We are obeying. And wow, that's good and dandy. Under most circumstances, we still have our own obligations to defend the Constitution. And part of that means getting out there and participating in some good old civil disobedience. As I'm making this video, yesterday was the Operation Lockdown in Lansing, Michigan, where thousands and thousands of people hopped in their cars against Governor Gretchen Whitmer's executive order to lock down everything because of snow or whatever. Her reasoning was flawed, and the policy itself was very flawed, and she's auditioning for vice president. So it is what it is. But patriots reacted. American citizens responded in force. And this is the type of organizing at the grassroots level that the American conservative movement wants to do. And I'm very proud and pleased to be participating in it. I'd said that it was in research mode. It wasn't just looking at these various positive and negative, effective and ineffective conservative groups. I also took a look at the Tea Party. What happened? I called a handful of people that I knew were early participants, in some cases founders of the Tea Party, and I flat out asked them what happened, what went wrong, what could have been avoided. In other words, why was the Tea Party essentially the most powerful driving force behind the red waves of 2010 and 2014. The Tea Party was very effective. They got people like Dave Bratt and Tim Hulskamp and Ted Cruz and Tim Scott. It got them into office, and that was great. But then, come 2018 or 2016, actually, Hulskamp got beaten, and then Dave Bratt lost in 2018, and now all of a sudden, there are no quote-unquote Tea Party candidates. What went wrong? And that's what I was asking. And generally speaking, the movement is still alive. It's still strong. There's still a whole lot of people that are involved with it. The problem is that it's splintered, and there were a few other things, but we learned from them. As we're putting this together, we wanted to learn from what they did right, what they made mistakes on, and how we can do better. Not just from an excitement perspective, they did fine, especially with the early excitement, but on the longevity, on the durability perspective, we need this movement to be long-lasting and effective indefinitely. Because even after the coronavirus is over, even after the 2020 election is over, there's always going to be a need to push back against cultural Marxism, against social justice warrioring, against abortion, and attacks on the Second Amendment, attacks on our freedom of religion. This isn't going to end just because we're able to get the word out. Okay, it's going to be ongoing, and we need to be there, ready to fight every battle. But we also looked at other elements, other, I guess you could say, for lack of a better word, we looked at the enemy. Okay, I took a very deep dive into several organizations, most notably the Justice Democrats. 2016, 2017, they didn't exist, essentially. They came out of nowhere. And they're the reason why Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is currently a congresswoman. They're the reason why Rashida Tlaib is in Congress. They're the reason why there's a rise in the number and radicalness of candidates who are espousing the tenets of socialism. And sadly enough, from what I found, this might terrify some of you. It should terrify all of you. But socialism isn't the end goal. Okay, socialism is just a step. We look at socialism, we said, oh my gosh, let's pray, let's fight, make sure socialism never comes. If it comes, and the Justice Democrats have their way, they're not stopping there. You say, oh, well, they'll go on to even further to the left to communism. Nope, that's not even the end goal. From what I can tell, again, this is based on their words and their actions and their goals. The long term, the end game for them is so radical. I don't know if there's actually a word for it. There's not actually even a classification for what exactly they want to do. It's new, and it is based upon a global society. It's based on the type of diffusion of wealth. It's not about redistributing wealth. It's about eliminating all wealth. It's about taking it and making it non-essential. We're talking about communism to the fullest degree, something that even Marx had no intention of pushing towards. But again, I'm not so much worried about their ideology. The thing that really attracted them to me, as far as from a research perspective, was their strategies, their techniques. It worked. They were able to raise a decent amount of money, but more importantly, they were able to find candidates who resonated, and they were able to promote those candidates. And they continue to do this today, and they will continue to do this for a long time. One can say that Bernie Sanders' popularity and the fact that he almost won could be directly attributed to many of the strategies employed by the Justice Democrats. I don't want to put them on too high of a pedestal and say that they were the reason that Bernie was going to win before the DNC stepped in, but that's not far from the truth. They did do some pretty effective things in their time, and they almost pulled it off. But the DNC, the Democratic establishment, wasn't going to have it. So now we'll see what happens with the Justice Democrats. The worst thing that could happen for them is if Joe Biden or whichever candidate the DNC gets ends up winning. But I digress. One of the things that they did that I really enjoyed from a strategy perspective is that they took the standard political game plan, playbook, and they threw it out the door. They threw it out the window. They threw it in the chimney, wherever. They threw it somewhere. And they went after civilians. They went after people who weren't necessarily involved in politics. Maybe they were activists. I think most of them were very active in politics, but not directly engaged. They weren't finding elected officials. They were pulling from the core. And that's something that I believe the conservative movement needs to do. And I'm not talking about the American conservative movement. I'm talking in general. Something that I learned from them is that you don't just necessarily take people who have been in politics for their whole lives. You find people that are compelling, that are intelligent, that can believe from an ideological perspective what the movement believes in. People like Mindy Robinson, for example. Mindy will be speaking at the Saving America conference, and until just a few months ago, she was best known as a Hollywood actress and an activist on Twitter. She took on a whole lot of people on Twitter, criminals, pedophiles. She helped to get people arrested. She did some pretty cool and amazing stuff. She moved out to Las Vegas into a red district and watched it turn blue. And then she watched as the Republican Party in the area was unable to take it back. They lost it in 2016. They couldn't take it back in 2018. And in 2020, going into 2020, it looked like they weren't really taking it seriously enough to mount an attack on the congressional candidates there. So she decided, why not me? Why don't I get involved? I can't sit here and complain all day about what the politicians in my district are doing if I'm not willing to actually do something about it. And for some people, that means just getting involved from an activist perspective, getting involved with campaigns, finding good candidates, promoting people to run. And for people like Mindy Robinson or Buzz Patterson, who's also going to be speaking at the event, it's a matter of, throw my name in the hat. Let's get the goblet of fire. Let's win the Wizards Cup or whatever. So that's what the Justice Democrats did. They had a call for people to become candidates, and that's where they found most of them. They had over 10,000 from what I heard, quote unquote applicants. It was a casting call, so to speak, and they interviewed them and found AOC and others, and they became the rest is, as they say, history. So, fast forward to this event. Saturday, April 18th. I keep saying 19th. I have April 19th stuck in my head. Oklahoma City bombing. April 18th, this Saturday, we are having our first ever Saving America conference. It will be on Facebook Live. And I know a lot of people will say, well, I hate Facebook. I do too. You look at my Facebook profile, you'll see that I very rarely, if ever, use it. I'm not a big fan, but we wanted a few things to happen. Number one, we wanted this to be free. We wanted people to be able to watch the event and participate, sending questions to the speakers. We wanted to be able to make sure that in this time of social distancing and stay-at-home orders that nobody was excluded because of proximity to an event. So holding a live event was going to be out of the question. We wanted to make sure that we could capture it for the future because we want to have these Saving America conferences. Not every year, not every 2 years, not every 6 months. We want to have them every few weeks. I'm talking literally 3 to 5 weeks between each conference because that is where we are as a nation. That is where we are as a conservative movement. We can't sit around and wait until next year to have the next batch of speakers. We can't sit around and hope that somebody else is going to do something. We need to act. The American conservative movement has and will always have the philosophy of we're not here to make a statement. We're here to make an impact. And it's not just on politics. It's about culture. It's about religion. We need to make sure that appropriate American conservatism is what is essentially making the rules, setting the policies, because we know that our hand is steady. I'm not talking about ours as in the movement or the conference. I'm saying in general, when you have conservatives, true conservatives in charge, whether it's at a city or a state or the nation, when you have conservatives in charge, their tendency to err on the side of less government, their desire to reduce government expenditures, to reduce taxes, to put more not only power, but also responsibility into the hands of the people. This is what will make America great. It always has, and it always will. There may come a time in the future where we have to fight a different type of authoritarianism. We don't know what's going to happen. But at least based upon the way that America is situated today, we know that conservatism works. It always has. And hopefully it always will. I am very pleased to talk about the genesis of this, and I'll keep it brief because we're running out of time. But I think it's important to note that when I first got onto a call with Jeff Dornick, the person who is putting on this event as far as from a logistics perspective, the person who is co-founding the American Conservative Movement with me, the person who introduced me to pastors Sam Jones and Ken Peters. It was, I hate to say miraculous because I don't throw the word around very lightly, but let's just say things came together exactly when they were supposed to, in the exact way that I could never have imagined. If I was looking for an ideal situation after over 10 years of contemplating, planning, researching, and talking to literally hundreds of people about this concept of the American Conservative Movement, if I had tried to figure out what's the best way to make it happen, wouldn't have been what's actually been happening. This was thrown on my lap in a way that, I hate to say it, that I cannot explain. Could be divine. I don't want to attribute divinity to anything, because I'm a man and I don't know whether it was or not. But by golly, it sure is compelling to see everything coming together. So this Saturday, April 18th, on our Facebook page, American Conservatism, Facebook.com/American Conservatism, you will be able to watch this. The event starts at 9 a.m. Pacific time, so noon on the East Coast, and it will be going on for 8-9 hours or so. Yes, it's going to be a long conference, but thankfully you'll be able to watch it from the comfort of your own home. Take whatever breakfast breaks you need. We'll have breaks for lunch, for snacks. We'll have breaks even for dinner. Yes, it's going to go that long, but it's important that we get what we need out there. The speakers are going to be incredible. I'm amazed that this went from concept 3 weeks ago to getting the speakers that we were able to get in such a short notice. Again, blessing, absolutely blessing. I mentioned Michael Johns. I mentioned Mindy Robinson. And there's also going to be Trevor Loudon. If you want to look him up, the guy is brilliant, and he's definitely all about defending our freedoms. Pastor Greg Locke, this guy has no problem with controversy. He has no problem with expressing his deep, soul-felt love for America. We need a lot more than that. Today we have a leftist movement. The counter movement to what we're trying to do. That, legitimately, if you look just at their actions and their words, they hate America. I hate to say it, but they hate what America is today. I don't think they hate America as a nation. They hate our history, and they hate our present. And the only way that they wouldn't hate our future is if they got their wish, which is to completely deconstruct and then attempt to reconstruct America in the image of Karl Marx or whoever, somebody bad. Okay, they want to resurrect Fidel Castro and put him in charge, put him in the White House. I don't know. I hate to say it, I have no idea exactly what they have planned and what they would do if they had the power. All I know is we have to prevent it. The first step to that is this Saturday, the Saving America Conference. The second or concurrent step is joining the American Conservative Movement. We want to be doing the things that we don't just be holding conferences and that's all we do. We want to get out there into the street. We need to get out there into the street. We need to be out there driving to Lansing. We need to be out there participating in civil disobedience. It's something that I don't think should be done on a regular basis. It shouldn't have to be done very, very often at all. But as the coronavirus has demonstrated, or I should say the reaction to the coronavirus has demonstrated, little old civil disobedience isn't bad and is often required from time to time. We have to remind the authoritarians that we are still in control. This is still our country. They still work for us. So anything short of that is it's wrong. It's unconstitutional. And then if you had to have a third step, it would be to spread the word about us. You can follow us on Twitter at AmConMovement. Again, you can go to our website. Everything is there. Our YouTube channel, our Instagram page. We put articles up several times a week. That's AmericanConservativeMovement.com. I hope I see you guys on Saturday. I really do. Spread the word. Tell your friends and family. It's not like you're going to be going anywhere on Saturday anyway, right? I am your humble host, JD Rucker, and this was the Rucker Report. God bless you.